All right, we have Doron. We are ready to go. Shalom, Rabbi Grodner. Good evening.
Good evening.
So thanks everybody for joining. This is great. I'm very excited about this evening. I first just want to make a mention of a dear friend of ours, both of myself and Rabbi Grodner's, who is in the hospital, and we're definitely thinking about him this evening. His name is Avram Yosef Ben Malka, and the learning and the enrichment that we have tonight is for ourselves, but also for his refuah. In honor of Yom Yerushalayim this week, Rabbi Grodner and I wanted to take the opportunity to spend some time with all of you discussing our personal connection to the city of Jerusalem and our gratitude. You know, it's just incredible. We can hop in our cars, we can hop in a bus, and we just show up in Yerushalayim. And this is a place since the times of King David, 3,000 years ago, which has been and continues to be the spiritual focal point of the Jewish people. You know, our connection to Jerusalem is so ancient, it's hard to really internalize that. In the book of Daniel, which takes place after the destruction of the first temple, we're told of this beautiful image, one of Daniel himself, in his window facing Jerusalem from Babylonia and pouring his heart out in prayer. Incredibly, every single synagogue in the world, no matter the denomination, faces Jerusalem. Every prayer that a Jew has prayed for the last 3,000 years faces Jerusalem, is directed towards Jerusalem. So what makes Jerusalem so special to the Jewish people? What is it supposed to represent? And now that we've miraculously come home to Jerusalem after 2,000 years, is this the Jerusalem that we've been praying for? So to help me struggle with these questions, and some others as well, I've invited a Rebbe, a role model, someone who I look to as an incredible inspiration for Am Yisrael, and that's Rav Doron Perez, who I'd like to introduce now just to share a little bit about Rav Doron. So Rav Doron is the chief executive of the Mizrahi World Movement, a position he has held since his return to Israel in 2014 from Johannesburg, South Africa. During his 15-year shlichut in South Africa, Rav Perez fulfilled multiple leadership roles as the executive director of Mizrahi South Africa, the senior rabbi of Mizrahi Shul, and head of Yeshiva College School, the first and largest Torah school in South Africa. I think it was Rav Hillel that mentioned to me that when you left, there was 3 or 4 positions that had to be filled in South Africa. So that's a little bit of the kochot that you have in you and everything that you did there and that you're doing now. Rav Perez was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, and made Aliyah at the age of 18. He studied for 10 years in some of Israel's leading yeshivot, right up the road from where I'm sitting in Beit El, Yeshivat Beit El. Yes, Rav Doron, right? One of those.
Indeed,
yeshivot.
indeed.
And I have to get you up here again. He also served in the IDF as part of the Hesder program and completed his rabbinical ordination and a Bachelor of Education majoring in Jewish philosophy. He's currently studying for an MA in Jewish history. He's the author of the book Leading the Way and a sought-after speaker and scholar in residence in communities in Israel around the world. I can vouch for this. Many times I've tried to speak to Rav Doron and I never know where I'm going to catch him. He's in America, he's in South Africa, he's in Australia. He's someone who's sharing the Torah of Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim throughout the world, which is amazing. At World Mizrahi, Rav Perez's major focus is the organizational transformation and invigorating the global religious Zionist movement with its dual focus on the Jewish and Zionist identity and destiny. And you guys are doing amazing work. Really, really, it's an honor to be connected to you, to be a part of all that you guys do. And we really thank you on a personal note, myself and Rabbi Grodner, thank you for the opportunity to partner with you and be a part of the incredible network of sharing Torah with Am Yisrael here in Eretz Yisrael and around the world. So Shakoach Rav Doron, thank you very much. Really, really so happy and grateful that you're here. Before I jump into some of the difficult questions I mentioned at the beginning, I just would love to hear, and I'm sure the group gathered here would love to hear as well, your personal relationship to Jerusalem. So would you mind just sharing with us, when did you first come to Jerusalem? What were your first memories of Jerusalem?
Sure, amazingly, my first memory of Jerusalem is as a 9-year-old boy being on the Temple Mount, going to visit the Dome of the Rock. Now, the reason that
Wow.
happened is that I didn't grow up in a religious family. I came from Johannesburg, South Africa. In fact, my parents are on the line as well. We grew up in a traditional South African home. I came to Israel for the first time when I was 9 years old. I think it was 1979. And I remember going up the Temple Mount. Now, I was a South African boy. I didn't quite know exactly, where I was, what's going on. And tourists were allowed then, non-Israelis into Temple Mount. And that's what I remember.
Talk about jumping in the deep end. I mean, that's just
right.
Wow.
And that's actually the only memory that my only first memory that I remember as a 9-year-old boy of being in Jerusalem is being in the Temple Mount. And that's what I remember. That's quite, as you say, jumping straight into the deep end. Of course, as my family through my wonderful parents became more observant and more religious when I was around from my bar mitzvah age. So I think, a couple of years later, we became more observant, and then throughout high school, much more observant. So when I came back to Israel when I was 16 or 17 years old, and then eventually to study in yeshiva for a third time when I was 18, it was clear that I wasn't then going onto the Temple Mount. I haven't been back since. I know there are different opinions about going up in the Temple Mount, but it's quite amazing that is actually my first memory of Jerusalem as a 9-year-old boy.
Wow. So I assume that had some sort of impact on you, that being your first image up there. Do you have any, kind of specific memories of being up there? Were you able to feel the impact of what that was? You were too young.
I just remember going, I actually haven't thought about this memory for a long time because, maybe I pushed it out my mind that I've been into the Temple Mount. But I remember going under the Dome of the Rock and seeing what's the foundation stone, I don't know what it is. And the guard pointing out the different caves, that this is the holiest place on earth according to the Jewish people. And it made an incredible impact. Again, I'm a 9-year-old boy, traditional, not particularly religious. And here I am in the holiest place on earth in this foundation stone. It did seem a bit weird to me that it was under a mosque, or at least a shrine. But there we were in this foundation stone and looking into this cave, it had, as I say, of all the things I did in Israel for the couple of weeks that we were there in December of 1979, my clearest, most vivid memory is being in the Temple Mount under the shrine next to the foundation stone. So it clearly had an impact. Yeah.
Of course. Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. Obviously, the Old City and the Temple Mount, those carry incredible significance for Am Yisrael. Other places in Jerusalem that are your favorite? Of course, the Mizrahi headquarters. Little did you know then at age 9 that you would be, centered in Jerusalem, right in the heart of the city. But besides that area of town, are there other areas in Jerusalem that you would call your favorite?
Well, firstly, I just want to point out one topographical thing about Jerusalem that I always marvel at. I live in a place called Yad Binyamin. I have the privilege of driving into work almost every single day. And every time I drive into Jerusalem and drive through the streets of Jerusalem, wherever you are in Yerushalayim, I'm reminded of the pasuk, which it says in Psalm 125, Yerushalayim harim savivla. Jerusalem is surrounded by hills and mountains. Everywhere you go in Jerusalem, there are mountains. And there's almost no straight roads in Jerusalem. That one of the hardest marathons in the world is the Jerusalem Marathon. In fact, most of the top runners in the world do not like to run the Jerusalem Marathon because your time as a runner is dependent on the average of all your marathons. And whoever runs the Jerusalem Marathon is always 12 or 13 minutes slower than other marathons because it is so hilly. Every other, the Tel Aviv Marathon is flat. The Tiberias Marathon is flat. The New York Marathon, by and large, is flat. The London Marathon, by and large, is flat. Almost every marathon is flat. You come to Jerusalem and you can hardly find a flat road. And, when I drive into Jerusalem from the west coming, let's say, so you come into Motza, you come through the hills, Mevaseret Zion, and then you see the first hill, Har Nof, Mountain View. And then as you come around the mountain, you see Har Menuchot, the Mount of Menuchot. And then as you come around the mountain, you see Ramot, the heights, Ramot Aleph, Ramot Bet, Ramot. Then you come to the next area, it's called Romeima, with heights. Then you come to the next area on the right, it's called Givat Shaul, meaning every one of those neighborhoods is either a hill, a mountain, a height, etc. Everything about the city is wherever you go. And that I find incredible, that it's the most unlikely place. Jerusalem is one of the least accessible cities in the whole of all capital cities. It's the only capital city which still doesn't have an active train. I mean, there is a train now which is going to, to the airport, and it's still having its teething issues, but the traditional train winds its way all the way around through the hills. Nobody uses it, meaning it's the most, until recently there was certainly no train to the city center.
Sure.
And it's the most
it's very inaccessible. Yeah.
Very inaccessible. It's off the beaten track. There's something totally it doesn't fit into regular political military rationale of building a city. And I'm reminded of that fact every single time I go through the city of Jerusalem. Yerushalayim Harim Saviv La, up and down and up and down and up and down. It's something about the Temple Mount being, and of course Mount Moriah has on the east. There's Mount Zion. There's Mount Har HaTzofim, where Hebrew University is, Har HaZeitim. Everything about Jerusalem is mountains. It's an unusual experience, and I marvel at that every time.
Beautiful to be able to come from the lowlands up to Yerushalayim every day to work. What an incredible experience. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
And also hinting to the spiritual significance of Yerushalayim, not just the physical surrounding area of it, but
absolutely
the highest place in the world, as our sages teach us. Amazing. Are there, you've been working in Jerusalem for many years. You're very familiar with Jerusalem. Is there any hidden areas that you like to kind of sneak off to? A place where you'll bring a family member who's visiting, or a tourist who hasn't seen Yerushalayim? A little off the beaten path spot in Jerusalem that you love.
Well, it is interesting. The off the beaten path thing I'm going to say now is so not off the beaten path for people who studied Hebrew University. But for those who don't study at Hebrew University, you would never go there. One of my favorite places in Jerusalem is the amphitheater of the Hebrew University, which faces the eastern slopes towards Ma'ale Adumim in the Dead Sea. Now, that's not off the beaten track because anyone at the university knows it. But if you haven't been to Hebrew University, you would never go there. And what I just find unbelievable about that particular place that I love going to is because, again, when I come into Jerusalem from the west, there are trees everywhere. From when you get the Beit Shemesh area up through Sharagai, all the way through the hills and mountains, it's absolutely green and lush, and all those trees have been planted, trees all the way in. And incredibly, when you get to the eastern tip of Mount Scopus and you look down, it's a desert. How can this tiny little, well, not so small today, the city of Jerusalem is sitting at this at this meeting point between a desert in the east and this lush, beautiful, growing, city, which you just look to the west and it's full of rain and it's beautiful and green. And it's just incredible how just a few meters over the hill and you're in a different country, a different time zone, almost a different topography.
Rav Doron, if I may interrupt for a moment.
Of course.
You're talking about my neighborhood. I live in Kfar Adumim.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I should have actually started to say to both to Rav Reuven Grodner, the founding Rav of the Beit Midrash, which I've had such a pleasure to have opportunity to speak at a number of times and to be involved in this program together with Rav Yonatan. It's an honor and privilege to be with you, Rav Reuven, and you, Rav Yonatan, for bringing me in. And absolutely, so if you live in that area, so you see it every day. You come in from the east, right? But the rest of us, most people come in from the west, and really, it's just absolutely breathtaking.
That's amazing. We do take it a little bit for granted. I mean, this is the window that I look out in the Hillel building, looks out exactly to that view. And it is a beautiful view, and it's one of the views that I love taking people to show when they do come as well. So, but I'll definitely look at it a little bit differently now after you shared that beautiful experience.
Rav Doron, if I may interrupt one more time, please. I remember shortly after making Aliyah, we lived in a caravan here in Kfar Adumim, and a friend of mine wrote to his rabbi in the United States and said to him, "You pray 3 times a day. May our eyes see Yerushalayim." I can see Yerushalayim from my bathroom window.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Rodner. So just to go a little bit deeper, Doron, Jerusalem, it's a heavy place. It's a city that's heavy with history, destruction, but also filled with tremendous hope. Walking through Jerusalem today, we see the prophecy of Zechariah coming to fruition. Old men and women, boys and girls, playing in the streets, walking in the streets. So it can be a very complex place. So how do you relate to Jerusalem, the historical significance, the pain and tragedy, the loss, the incredible miracles, all the complexity of Jerusalem? How do you kind of put the pieces together?
Well, I think no people on earth have had as deep and long a connection to a particular place of terra firma, a particular city, than the Jewish people to Jerusalem. And therefore, as you describe, the pain, the hopes, the ups, the downs, those are the realities of life. Those are the vicissitudes of life. And such is the relationship to Jerusalem. As we know, Jerusalem is some of our deepest mourning and pain for the destructions and repeated destruction. Exiles are associated with the city. So much so that as we know, the traditional blessing to comfort people is, I mean, is there any other culture on earth that when you go and comfort an individual Jew, you conjure up the national mourning for Jerusalem? That's the biggest story of our mourning. So the Avelut for Yerushalayim and Tisha B'Av, it's so deeply connected to the city, but yet at the same time, the images of Odi Shama Ba'ara Yehuda, it'll hear, the Kol Sason, the Kol Simcha, that the very sounds of Simcha, and as you say, the elderly, and Zechariah's prophecy of children and elderly walking in Jerusalem, and Chatan and Kala, and holding Yerushalayim al Rosh Simchatenu, and being the crescendo of everything that we hold dear. That's what Yerushalayim is. It's our story, and therefore, like any life story, it has its ups and downs, and it has its twists and turns, and it contains every element of the human experience, and that's what Yerushalayim is. And I think I just feel that we have to pinch ourselves, as you say, as Rav Grodner so beautifully said, that he can look out of his window and see Yerushalayim. We have to pinch ourselves that we live in an era that we can all that I work in Yerushalayim, that you work in Yerushalayim, that we can visit Yerushalayim. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, with some of the questions to come. But it's just an unbelievable thing that we live in such an era for the last 53 years, where the holiest place on earth, the old city, the Kotel, and all of the united city of Yerushalayim, that we can actually celebrate that city is amazing. And maybe one, I'll leave that thought for later on. But that's so it reflects the totality of life experience, and such is the relationship of the Jewish people to Jerusalem.
And what's an amazing thing about the story that, as you're sharing so beautifully, is that the story isn't finished. We still are writing the story of Yerushalayim, but we are at an incredible point. And looking back to the 6-Day War, the return of the entire city of Jerusalem to Israeli control, coming from the religious Zionist perspective, what should be our religious or spiritual response to these events, 67 and now going forward, 51 years forward? How do we, as from a religious standpoint, what's our response to this?
Well, I think first and foremost, our religious response has to be appreciation. Hoda'ah v'hodaya. We sometimes make the mistake of Yonatan in life, is that people feel they can only give thanks when it's a perfect thanks. They can only really appreciate things when it's all just, it's all just dandy and it's all just perfect. But we all know that life is seldomly perfect. And the essence of life is to give appreciation for those moments of life, which sort of just give such perspective to life, even though they occur in imperfect reality. So is there so much still to achieve with Jerusalem, and is there a long way to go? Yes, and we can speak about that. But we first and foremost have to appreciate that, to my mind, the greatest day in Jewish history since the Hanukkah miracle is the return to Jerusalem on Kaf Chet Iyar that we're going to have this Thursday night, 53 years ago. The only other day which maybe rivals that is the establishment of the state of Israel. But to me, the return to Jerusalem against the odds, where we were not expecting it. It's a war where one day we were fighting for our lives, not even knowing if we would survive. I often quote how there's various military, security sources believe there'd be up to 100, if not 150,000 dead. You live in Beit El, Rosh Hashiva in Beit El, Rav Zalman Melamed. I was often present when he would speak on Yom Yerushalayim, and he told us, I heard these words from his mouth. He said, I was a chaplain in the Israeli army in 1967, an army chaplain. And I was sent to the park, the Yarkon Park in Tel Aviv, to convert it into a temporary cemetery. We thought Israel believed that there was not enough green grass in Israel to bury the expected dead. They were expecting 100 to 150,000 dead. Certainly there was not enough cemetery space. And therefore this was the reality. And therefore when Israel didn't know how they were going to emerge from this, and yet not only did they emerge from it, but 3 days later, the third day of the war, having beckoned with the Jordanians not to enter the war. And even when the Jordanians started shelling Jerusalem, they sent another delegation and said to the king, please, we have no issue with you. This is a battle in the south against Egypt and north against Syria. It's not on the eastern front. If you stay out of it, we stay out of it. Yet he continued, as we know, and nobody could believe that 3 days later, here we were in Jerusalem. And I just think the fact that I often say that I've heard in history of wars which are measured in years. There's the 100 Years' War, the 80 Years' War, the 30 Years' War. Where in the annals of human history is there any other example of any war measured in days? The 6-day war, really?
Wow.
You go to war at 7:45 on a Monday morning, expecting, God forbid, 100,000 dead, and by Motzei Shabbos Havdalah, it's over. And not only is it over, the 100,000 dead are less than 800 dead. And of course, every Jewish life and every human life, and every life is a life and world in of itself, and a loss to family and a terrible tragedy. But when you're expecting 100,000 and it's less than 800, and you're expecting a war which will drag on for weeks and months and God knows how long, where the War of Independence went on for a year. And here a war is over. Who's ever heard of such a thing? The 6-day war? And not only the 6-day war, to triple in land size, to return to our ancestral homeland, to vanquish aggressors, and then to return to Jerusalem, to the holiest place on earth. We have to pinch ourselves that we live in such an era. To me, Yom Yerushalayim is a day of just biblical proportions, where we simply give thanks for the incredible blessings that we have. And I think first and foremost, for me, being a religious Jew, being a Jew aspires to be in tune with spiritual religious values. Our attitude first and foremost has to be appreciation, is to look back and appreciate. Yes, things are not perfect, and yes, there's a long way to go, and yes, there are lots of challenges in Israel and lots of challenges in Jerusalem, and in many ways, the 6-day war created all types of geopolitical challenges that we still grapple with today. But that should never cloud for one moment the ability to look back and appreciate the enormity of the times. I think so often in life, Rabbi Yonatan, so often in life, our complexity of life clouds our abilities to appreciate the blessings of life. I just want to give 2 examples, and then I'll hand back to you. I often say a marriage, when a person gets married, right? What can be a happier day than when a person gets married? And, it's such an incredible day. But does marriage bring eternal bliss? Some people say that the first year of marriage is the hardest year of marriage, and 2 different people trying to get used to each other. And life comes with so many challenges. Does the complexity of marriage, should that ever for a minute dim the incredible simcha that we felt on the day we got married? No, the day we got married is an unbelievable simcha. Yes, with time it creates challenges, creates blessing and challenges, such as life. And I give one other example, is the birth of a child. Boy, oh boy, do we celebrate when we have a child. But very soon that child who's born is one of our greatest blessings, doesn't sleep. And we don't sleep, and it drives us crazy. And then it's the terrible twos, and then it's the teething, and then it's teenagehood, which is, how do you even survive teenagehood with the levels of idiocy that one has to deal with? And not only you get through that, and finally your children, they turn out to hopefully be half a mensch, and then some other boy or girl whisks them off their feet, and then they disappear, and then you need permission to go and visit them and their children, and it depends, and it depends on the, but should any of those complexities of life, of having children, ever dim the incredible privilege of the birth of such a blessing? And therefore, for me, Yom Yerushalayim, the 6th day, we gave birth to some of the biggest blessings of the Jewish people, aspirations for thousands of years. Have they created challenges? Yes. Does so much dependent on Jerusalem, the geopolitical and spiritual area? Yes. Do we have all the answers? No. However, that should never ever dim the enormous spiritual appreciation that we have for the era that we live in, and the miracles that were wrought by Hashem in order to have these blessings.
Very beautiful. I love the image of the child. We just had our first bat mitzvah, our first Zoom bat mitzvah. We didn't get to do it in person, but I'm a little concerned now hearing your depiction of teenagers. But I love the image, and the story is, the story is still being written, and the end has not yet been revealed. But do you think that Jerusalem is going in the right direction? Are we pointing in the right directions? Are things unfolding as they should be from your perspective?
Yeah, by and large, yes. The fact that today there are 900,000 citizens who live in Jerusalem, the largest the city has ever been, the largest Jewish population, 600 and something, or 500,000 or 600,000 Jews who live in Yerushalayim, which is also unbelievable. And yes, I think building in Yerushalayim is not so easy today. And it's every house which goes up in Yerushalayim, there are challenges in terms of that. Oh, sorry, I know that you've just lost you've lost the picture, but I'll be back in a second. Give me one moment. Sorry.
No problem.
The call came. You can hear me still, yeah?
We can hear you.
You can hear me. Yeah, okay. So let me just talk 1 second. There we go. Should be back now.
All right.
Okay.
Back. Great.
All right. So I just want to say that I was saying that what was I saying about Yerushalayim? I was saying that. Do you remember what I was saying? I just switched off
that we're just talking about the challenges of building in Yerushalayim, and how there are particular challenges on the ground.
But with all of that, the city is growing, and it's there's huge visions for Jerusalem. Near Barkat's vision for Jerusalem of making it more of a commercial center with the whole plan over, and I think commercially it's growing, religiously it's growing, culturally it's growing. And I think B'sach HaKol, it's moving in the right direction. Yes, we don't know what the end of the story is. We don't know the answers regarding, Beit HaMikdash, Temple Mount. We don't know the answers exactly how these things are going to unfold. But are we, despite not knowing exactly how the rest of the story is exactly going to unfold, it's the epicenter of Jewish, political life, Jewish religious life. It's and I think it's moving in the right direction. And also, to have also religious freedom, to have a Jerusalem which has such religious freedom, is an unbelievable thing. I always say that there are more shuls, mosques, and churches within a 1 kilometer radius of the old city of Jerusalem than any other place on earth. Any other place on earth. I say the Vatican, you only find churches. There are no shuls and mosques in the Vatican. In Mecca, the holiest place to the Muslims, you won't find any shuls and you won't find any churches. In Jerusalem, somehow, everybody's got a claim in Jerusalem. It's the most complex city on earth. It's the holiest city to the Jews, and because it's holy to us, it's become holy to the other great monotheistic religions. And all of them have a chelik in Yerushalayim, even though, of course, Jerusalem was made famous, and the longest connection to Jerusalem, of course, is the Jewish people's connection in our holiest place. But there's a complexity around Yerushalayim that to hold this complexity is not a simple thing. But somehow it is growing, and the Jewish people's march to bring Jewish history forward continues with great blessing.
Well, unfortunately, over the last couple of months, we haven't been able to experience this. But one of my favorite things is just walking through the streets of Yerushalayim, whether it be Mirkaz Ha'ir or the Old City. There's this incredible vibrancy, aliveness, and diversity. I think that's one of the things that people who haven't spent that much time here, that's one of the things that really shocks them. There's a member of our family that comes from, I also come from a non-religious background like you, and a member of our family was visiting, and she was blown away by the diversity, the energy, the different religions, and that's something that I think unfortunately doesn't get enough press. But that aliveness of Yerushalayim is something that's so special today.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I hope that it returns very, very soon.
Absolutely.
So just as far as where we're pointing, and maybe to look a little bit further down the road to try to envision and dream what Yerushalayim will be, there's a Gemara in Bava Batra that I like to learn with you, have a little chavruta with you. I can't pass up the opportunity to learn a little bit chavruta with you while I have you on the line. So the Gemara Bava Batra 75a, it analyzes a verse from Isaiah. And the verse says as follows: I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of precious stones, the whole encircling wall of gems. And on that passage, the Gemara goes and describes what those images are trying to evoke. In the center of the passage, in the middle of it, and your gates of precious stones, the Gemara says, this is what Rabbi Yochanan taught us. He said that in the future one, Kodesh Baruch Hu will bring precious stones and pearls that are 30 by 30 cubits, and he will haul them out in a hole by 10 by 20 cubits and set them in the gates of Yerushalayim. So what we're given here by the Gemara is a gorgeous vision of the future gates of Jerusalem. This is enormous. For us Americans, we're talking about 45 feet. For non-Americans, about 14 meters of precious stone. The Gemara says that it's onyx and pearl, black and white stones that are going to be at the gates of Jerusalem. Now there's a beautiful perush of this by the Maharal of Prague in Nitzach Yisrael, where he discusses this Gemara, and he says the following. First, he explains that the gates of the city represent its face, just as a person has a face. So to a city, and those are its gates. So what do the gates of Jerusalem tell us? These white and black stones. So the uniqueness of the city of Jerusalem, says the Maharal, is that it's God's city. And therefore, it must have something unique about it. It must express something of the divine. What is that? Says the Maharal, its ability to hold opposites, the black stone and the white stone. In other words, kindness and judgment, chesed, din, these are opposite. Yet both of these are midot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're able to exist paradoxically, so to speak, within Hashem. So, says the Maharal, Yerushalayim and its uniqueness is its ability to hold space for opposing concepts and not collapse either one. There's space for differences that Yerushalayim can hold that no other city in the world can hold. And considering that we also call Yerushalayim, it has the word shalom in it, the word peace in it. There's so much tension around Yerushalayim, as you mentioned. Some of the uniqueness of it is also some of the challenge of it, that everybody feels like they have a chelik in it. So where's the shalom? Well, we're told that somehow the city will hold opposites at one point. And I love that image, and I don't know how that's going to manifest itself, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about that Gemara and that image of a city that holds opposites all together.
You know, I think, Rav Yonatan, I think that is exactly the essence of the city. You know, when I was reflecting a number of years ago on Yerushalayim, everything about Yerushalayim is in double. Everything reflects contrast and contradiction in Yerushalayim. You mentioned the onyx and the pearl, the black and white, but the truth is, if you look at it, everything is double. Everything is, so to speak, in conflict. Jerusalem is a city, by the way. It's the only city that Chazal say exists on two planes, as an earthly city and a heavenly city. It's the only city that we say there's Yerushalayim Shel Mata, meaning what we see is the earthly city. There's Yerushalayim Shel Mala. And we know the Gemara says you can't go into Yerushalayim Shel Mata until you go into Yerushalayim Shel Mala, or the other way around, meaning it exists on two planes. We know that the name Jerusalem is made up of two components, Yireh, Shalem, two different elements of Yerushalayim, the fear and the peace, as you say. These two things come together. We also know that Jerusalem is the city in the geographic area of two different tribes, in the tribe of Binyamin and in the tribe of Yehuda. We also know that Jerusalem has two major names throughout Tanakh, Yerushalayim and Zion. In fact, it's called Zion more than it's called Yerushalayim, Zion and Yerushalayim. We also know that the city happens to be divided east and west. And everything about the city, there's the upper city and the lower city. Chazal talk a lot about the upper and the lower city. There's upper, there's lower, there's east and west. There's climates which meet in the city. There's the heavenly and the earthly city. In fact, a number of years ago, I heard an amazing idea that the word Yerushalayim, right? Why is it called Yerushalayim? Do you know that almost every time, barring a few exceptions, six times, it's written in the 669 times, almost all of them, it's written Yerushalayim, not Yerushalayim. It's written without a yud. And that's actually why in most languages, when you translate Yerushalayim, nobody calls it Jerusalem. They call it Jerusalem. And in French, Jerusalem. And in all other languages, it's Salem at the end, you know, Salem at the end. Why? It should be Jerusalem. It should be Yerushalem, not Yerushalayim. And why is it called Ayim? Because what is Ayim in Hebrew? Ayim is plural. Regel, Raglaim, Yad, Yadayim, Yerushalayim. The Jewish attitude to Jerusalem is on two planes. Everything about the city is double jeopardy, is double imagery. There's no simplicity when it comes to the city. And this complexity goes on and on and on and on and on. We know Jerusalem, according to the sages, has got at least 70 names, at least, because there's Midrashim which say it's got more, at least 70 names. Just like there's 70 nations which incorporate all the different elements of the political and ideological leanings in the world. This city incorporates them all in one city. And it's not by chance, as we said earlier, that all the nations of the world have a claim to Jerusalem. You know that the nations of the world have never given Jerusalem to the Jewish people. The partition plan, never, the Peel Commission's partition plans and all of the plans never awarded Jerusalem to the Jews. it was always going to be either an international city. No, because nobody can relinquish control of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has got something to do with the essence of our mission, the essence of the human story. I often say that the Rambam brings the Midrash, which says that Adam and Chava built their first mizbech on Yerushalayim. Why is it called Even Ashtiyah? Because the Misham Ushtat Haolam, the world was created from there. Where was the clods of earth of Adam Rishon taken from? Says the Rambam, Adam mimakom kaparaton nivra. Adam was created from the place of his kapora that would ultimately bring his atonement. The Beit HaMikdash was where he was created from, meaning the very clods of earth and the very first spiritual acts. And of course, according to Chazal, Cain and Hevel fought over Yerushalayim. According to Chazal, meaning what are we saying? The essence of the human and Jewish story has got to do with this particular place. The world emanates there. The world comes to its conclusion, so to speak, there. And really the story of Jerusalem is the story of the Jewish people, which is the story of humanity, which is a story of so much complexity. And I'll say that, it has to have complexity because the human experience is complex and the Jewish experience is complex. We know how Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chayim, and how many shivim panim la Torah, like the shivim panim to Yerushalayim. And therefore, this city has the ability to bring, and of course, I didn't mention old and new, east, west, upper and lower, heavenly, earthly, old and new. As you say in Jerusalem, you go to Yerushalayim and there's just a city within a city. You've got this old city with ancient walls and ancient culture, and then this new city with all these new buildings and new amazing images, etc. So you've got it all together. And really, I think, Rav Yonatan, that you mentioned it correctly when you say Yerushalayim, Shalem. We know that the word shalom is actually not peace. The word peace doesn't really exist isn't a Jewish word for peace. It really comes from the word pius in the Mishnah, which is from the Roman and Greek of pax, which is really peace at the end of the day is a state of non-war. If you look up in the dictionary, the word peace is when two people aren't killing each other. You live at peace when people are in a state of non-aggression. But you can have a very cold peace, a very distant peace. People cannot be killing each other, but spend every waking minute wanting to kill each other because of so much conflict. We all know that the difference between peace and shalom is that shalom is, of course, from the word shlemut. It's a word of harmony. It's a word of, as you say, it's the word of finding place for everybody. You have in life thesis, a view. Then you have in life antithesis, the opposite. And then you have synthesis. Yerushalayim is the city of synthesis. It's somehow able to hold every thesis and antithesis geographically, politically, religiously, colors, as you spoke about. It holds them all together. That is the essence of Yerushalayim. It's the ability to hold all of these differences together in one. And that's what makes it so special. And it's a miracle that Jerusalem is as peaceful as it is today. And even though we don't quite know the end of the story, we have a vision of what it may be. We don't know how it's going to take place with a mosque at the holiest place. And how is this all going to work? We don't know. But we know that somehow it is the type of city that it's going to be able to find place for everybody.
It was very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It makes me think that the discussions that we see in the political world, the tensions around the old city, these are appropriate from a certain perspective from what you're saying. There should be a tension. There should be a sense of investment. There should be a feeling of there is a place for me in Yerushalayim because, as we're told, Ki beiti beit tefillah lekol ha'amim. This is a space for the whole world to bring their tefillot, to bring themselves, to be able to elevate themselves to the mountains of Jerusalem, to bring themselves up. And so, of course, there's tension around that because it hasn't found its sense of malchut. And one of the things that we were looking for was, melech. We're looking for the melech. We're looking for King David, David HaMelech to come back. One of the ideas about malchut is that kingship is not just an oppressive ruler on high telling all his subjects what to do. A real king has the ability to be able to put everything in right relationship one with the other. And that in Jewish mysticism as well, God as the king puts everything, though it may be disparate, though it may be paradoxically opposite to one another, it all can fit into one context through this concept of malchut. Right, so what we're looking for is not to uproot or to discredit or disrespect. We're trying to find a space to put all these different concepts, though that they're opposites, all in right relationship one to the other. And maybe that's what it is that we're really praying for. When we pray for Yerushalayim and we pray for Beit David to come back, right? We were looking towards this future of a space that can hold all of the beautiful things that you're talking about, but in right relationship to one another, in that sense of shleimut, right? Where everything is working in harmony and peace, in real peace, not in pius, but in shleimut, what you're sharing. Wow, Yishar Koach, Rav Doron. I am fired up for Yerushalayim, Yom Yerushalayim. I'm looking forward to taking my Yom Yerushalayim Sidor, my Mizrahi Yom Yerushalayim Sidor off the shelf and bringing it down and using it Thursday night, B'ezrat Hashem. Wow, I'm fired up, excited, and inspired. Thank you. I want to give the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Rav Doron. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pleasure, Rav Ruvain. Thank you for the honor, Rav Ruvain, Rav Yonatan. Thank you.
I'd love to give any of the Chevra here who are tuning in the chance to ask you any questions. Anybody have anything further that they want to bring up? So we'll open it up to questions for a minute.
Sure.
So feel free to put it in the chat. Anyone is burning with a Jerusalem question or anything else they want to ask from their own?
Sure. Anyway, available for any question.
I guess I should have asked for permission before I opened it up that wide. But
no, not at all. Not at all.
This is a big chance. I guess you touched on the shleimut of everything, Rav Doron. I think people are left with their mouths open about the possibility, about the hope, about the dream. I love the idea of the sense of gratitude that we need to really feel at this stage. You know, I think I've mentioned it before to our students, but a lot of my education growing up was Holocaust education. And I never really had a deep sense of that because it wasn't something that I felt from within my family. When I got married, my wife's grandmother, Aliyah Shalom, was a survivor from the work camps in Romania. And,
wow.
You know, and I just think back, if you could whisper in her ear, you know, turn around, look and see, you know, in 1960, you know, this is 1939, 1940, maybe 1941. If you could just tap one of those people on the shoulder in those work camps, turn around and look, 1967, the opportunity to return to Yerushalayim, hearing Rav Goren, those incredible words, which I love to play, you know, so many opportunities to hear and connect to this stuff as it was, you know, to hear Rav Goren, you know, announce Har Habayit B'Yadeinu. It's just something that they couldn't even wrap their head around. And I find just to be able to try to step into that space of gratitude while saying Hallel, while connecting, you know, that's a very, very, very moving opportunity that we're given. And I'm not sure what our availability will be or the status will be of our shuls in a couple of days. Everything's changing so quickly here. Maybe we'll be able to do something outside with social distancing. But we won't be able to experience it the same way we do, you know, with the same kind of excitement and unity that we experience together on Yom Yerushalayim. But we can hold that gratitude in our hearts that we have for the ability and the opportunity to be amongst those small percentage of Jews that can walk up to Yerushalayim, take a bus. You know, it's really, really something so incredible. So I hold very dear that the teachings about gratitude that you shared. Just as, you know, one last point here, I'll just ask you before we sign off, because of the coronavirus and everything that we're experiencing now, the shift in the opportunities to celebrate Yom Yerushalayim. How are you personally celebrating it, planning to celebrate it? How is World Mizrahi kind of changing and celebrating Yom Yerushalayim this year because of the context that we're all experiencing?
So maybe I'll end with that, but just before I say that, I see Shani's asked a question on the group. If I can
okay, great, please.
Is it Shani? I think it's Shani, yeah? It said, Jerusalem for all people, ? How do we interact with other religions here in harmony? So maybe let me just refer to that, and then I'll end maybe with Corona and what we're going to be doing. I think first and foremost, the fact that Jerusalem is home to 3 major religions, the fact that everyone lives here by and large in peace and harmony, where you can go through on any given day, the Arab quarter of Jerusalem, the Christian quarter of Jerusalem, the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem. Where is there another city on earth which has a Christian quarter, a Muslim quarter, and a Jewish quarter? I'm not sure if there is. I'm not sure if there is. And the fact that you can go to, we can interact in such a place, and there's the freedom of religion. The fact that all of these religions, with all the challenges that they pose, sort of being on top of everyone, the Temple Mount is a perfect example. It is so complex, the Temple Mount, the holiest place to the Jews, but yet under Israeli sovereign control, but yet under Jordanian practical control, and the Waqf, and it's so complicated. Yet somehow it works. Somehow, yes, every once in a while it flares up, and every once in a while the challenges, and that is the biggest hotspot, and a place where you've got hundreds of thousands of Jews and hundreds of thousands of Muslim Arabs and tens of thousands of Christians all living in the city together, by and large in harmony, is quite unbelievable. There was a prayer recently, a Corona, prayer. I don't know if you saw, where they had the chief rabbis of Israel, they had the leading Christian leaders and Muslim leaders all in Jerusalem praying together, and that's what Jerusalem is. So yes, how do we do it? There's on any given day here, there's Christian groups, there's Muslim groups, there's people coming from all over the world to Jerusalem, and somehow Jerusalem has place for all of these people. It's a place which is at peace with itself. Yes, not to say that there aren't flares up now and then, and terror attacks now and then, and this and that, but by and large, all religions are free to practice in Israel and free to pray and roam in Jerusalem, and one sees that on a daily basis, and I think that's quite a special thing, and so I think that one experiences that every day. So just to end and say, how are we going to, in the Corona era, we've been doing a lot of programming, because I think all of us know how in this, on the one hand, the great challenge of social distancing has been a major challenge, but it's also given a big opportunity. It's allowed there to be Zoom connections and Zoom shiurim, and allowed people to connect from all over the world, which might not have during this time. So we've tried to use these days. We have had we created something called the World Beit Midrash, where we had Israel top speakers and musicians and intellectual thought leaders from all over the world interacting. We had an amazing program for Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, Lag BaOmer. We now have for Yom Yerushalayim. We've got a one-on-one with Alan Dershowitz, which is his, I'll send you the program. You can publicize it on, where we've got Rabbi Sachs and Racheli Frankel, and we've got leading tour guides, and we've got leading Rabbi Beryl Wan, the historian of Jerusalem, the story of the division of Jerusalem by virtual tour, the story of the reunification of Jerusalem. We've got videos that we've put together. We put together Mizrahi Tekes, a ceremony on the hilltops, on the rooftops of the old city, putting together a whole ceremony about Jerusalem, and with videos and multimedia presentations. And really for us, it's given us an opportunity to use all the connectivity that we have and all the audio-visual and technological blessings that we have to be able to connect people from all around the world. So there's a full program that we have, Rav Yonatan. I'll send it to you that you can disseminate as well, to be able to really have a multifaceted, deep, uplifting spiritual experience, even though we might not be able to gather together in person to celebrate.
The World Beit Midrash is amazing. I've been following you guys and all the incredible shiurim. I've been looking for you. I hope we'll see you more as well. This is a fantastic opportunity to hear from you, your personal connection to Yerushalayim, your inspiring vision of Yerushalayim, the sense of shleimut that we're all hoping for and praying for. Let it be very soon in our days. Let it be now. Let it be tomorrow. Let it be on Yom Yerushalayim. I wish you a Yom Yerushalayim Sameach, Rav Doron, and I again thank you so much for joining. It's such a pleasure to see you and to speak with you, and I thank everyone else for joining tonight. Yesher koach, and we hope we'll do it again soon.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Shakor.
Thank you. Thanks, Rav Yonatan. Thank you, Rav Ruvain.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.